Welcome in college baseball central fans. Back at it again. Another day, another Texas team. This time we're talking about the team that is kind of the flagship of the state, the Texas Longhorns. Jackson, Marshall, before we jump into it, how are we doing today?
Doing
Good.
good, Jake. Kind of. Texas isn't my favorite team in the state, but I do respect them. So I do respect what they got going on there in Austin.
Yeah, this
Same
one
with
should
me.
be an interesting one. As Jackson, you can tell by the Texas Tech flag in the background. Marshall with his cup that he was drinking pre-show. That this
There
one's
we go.
probably going to be a little bit tougher for us to talk about. But they return a ton of talent, and I think at second glance and hearing some interviews from Coach Pierce, I feel really kind of different about this Texas team than I felt kind of on initial when I was going through the roster. So before we jump into that, let's go ahead and talk about last year. It's David Pierce's 8th season in Austin coming up. 42 and 22, went 15 and 9 to be the co-Big 12 champions. They won the Miami Regional, lost 2-1 at the Stanford Regional on the fly ball, swept Texas Tech, swept West Virginia, took 2 of 3 from TCU. There's a lot to like about what Texas did last year. They had a ton of guys overperform, but again, they lose a lot. Dylan Campbell headed to the draft. Lucas Gordon, who was their Friday guy, draft. Mitchell Daly's at Kentucky. I know he was the starting second baseman and starting shortstop, but he's going to be gone. I think that was kind of a push out, in my opinion. Eric Kennedy, like a 7th or 8th year senior, is another guy that I think Texas is going to miss dearly. Garrett Gilmette, the Texas rental from USC, he's gone as well. And then you had backing guys like Zane Morehouse and Travis. I never figured out how to pronounce his name. I think it's Stevie or
Yes,
like
yes.
he
That
pitched enough. I felt
Stevel,
like I should have
yeah.
heard his name enough. He pitched a lot for the Longhorns down the stretch last year, and
Uh-huh.
really was tremendous. Marshall, I'll start with you. Who do you think is going to be the piece that Texas misses the most after out of all those names we mentioned?
I think the easy answer is Dylan Campbell. Up the middle. I mean, he was just solid like his entire tenure at Texas. But that's the easy answer. Everyone knows Dylan Campbell's a huge hole to replace. But I think a huge one to that kind of look out for is Eric Kennedy. I mean, last year hit 306 with 17 home runs. Losing him to the draft, it's a big hole to fill. But I believe. Um, yeah, I think they'll be okay. Garrett Gilmette behind the dish, man. Replacing a catcher, veteran catcher is always hard. I mean, last year he hit 298 with 11 home runs. So replacing a catcher that can swing it too, that's always a tough one. So I think really Dylan Campbell and Garrett Gilmette are going to be the ones that are going to miss the most.
Jackson, who do you think is Texas is going to miss the most from this lineup last year?
What caught my eye was Mitchell Daly. He always seemed like the constant, steady bat that was always in the lineup. You could roll him out there every day. He was going to do what you asked him to do. Like veteran presence. So I mean, you're always going to want veteran presence on your team. So missing that's going to be pretty huge.
I will say this: for as much College World Series talent that Texas has had over the past couple of years, it's almost kind of crazy to think that these last three teams didn't win it in Omaha. Like
Yeah.
they were one of the more talented Texas teams, I think, in at least my lifetime. And they fell kind of short for whatever reason. But let's go ahead and jump into it. Catcher behind the plate is going to be a big question mark for the Longhorns. I project Ryan Galvan to be the starter, but Kimball Schulister, I think is how you pronounce it. He was an
Mhm.
A&M transfer, was injured all of last year. He's been in a very tightly contested battle. Galvan was, if you remember, he's the guy who lost that starting job to Gilmet. Played in 34 games, hit 226 with 4 home runs, struck out 37 times. And then Kimball Schuler the year before, backing up Silas Sardwan. What's kind of the word on these catchers? I know that there's really a ton of unknown here, but who do you think kind of separates them, Marshall?
Yeah, I think you're going to kind of see a separation, hopefully in the first month of the season. I mean, like I said earlier, Garrett Gilmette is like a huge hole to fill, and Galvan, I mean, hitting 226 with 4 home runs, that's a big drop off from what Gilmette provided behind the dish, and so I think Kimball Schussler, I think he's a big question mark. I'm really intrigued to see what he does in the beginning of the season. I think they're going to kind of split reps more than people think earlier in the season, and I actually do think Kimball Schussler is going to kind of take the job over kind of later in the season, because he's an
Yeah,
older
he
guy.
almost feels like a Texas player. I mean,
Yeah.
there's tons of talented guys. I think Galvan is a more
Hmm.
talented arm, but as we've seen with Texas, with Murphy Staley, Eric Kennedy, Pierce kind of always seems to gravitate towards these older guys who seem to kind of get the big hit. And I think that's kind of
Yeah.
the situation that we're running into here. Jackson, what's kind of one thing that jumps out to you about Galvan and Schussler, and who do you think kind of sets themselves apart?
I mean, so I think going like pre Big 12 play, I think they kind of split reps between both, and then I would imagine they just ride the hot hand, whoever's playing the best going into Big 12. Seems like the most logical option to me. I mean, I don't really know what else. I mean, I would imagine Schuster might win it out, but it's probably just riding the hot hand.
Another note to add is Peyton Powell can catch. I know that that's kind of a nightmare scenario
Hmm.
for David Pierce, but that is worth noting. Moving on to first base, we got Luke Storm, the senior, transferring over from Duke. Came in mid-semester, and David Pierce was really, really high on him. He could DH as well with Jared Thomas at first, but I think he's going to more projected to be a center fielder. And this is a very, very veteran bat that I think Texas was really glad to keep from the draft and get him on campus.
Yeah, Luke Storm. I mean, transferring in from from Duke. I mean, last year he played. He started 60 out of 60 games he played in, and so I mean, it's just a veteran presence on the field at first base. I hit 258 with 13 bombs last year. Yeah, I mean, kind of you're kind of replacing Jared Thomas at first base because Jared Thomas is moving the outfield. I do think Luke Storm's going to kind of. I don't think he's going to DH that much over the year. I think that's going to be for a couple other guys, but because I also think Jared Thomas is going to kind of take over that center field spot in his sophomore season. But yeah, I mean that veteran presence at first base, veteran bat, kind of he can kind of lead the infield. I think Luke Storm is going to be good this year.
Jackson, got any notes on Luke Storm?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's exactly what you want at first baseman. He's always there every day, and then he's the big bopper bat. 258 average last year, but he had 14 doubles and 13 bombs. So that's all. Like out of a first baseman, that's kind of all you need. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and he hit 275 the year before. So for all the Texas fans that are not really eye jumping, I think he does have the ability to kind
Mhm.
of get streaky. The rest of the infield, we got Jack O'Dowd is back again after being transferring from Vanderbilt. Peyton Powell at third baseman again, another lefty righty that I think swings the bat really well. And then kind of the prize of this Texas infield, Jalen Flores, only hit 175 last year as a true freshman, DH'd a little bit for them in that regional. I think he's somebody that really, really takes a step forward. I know that he at times looked a little bit overwhelmed at shortstop and especially at the plate. I think he's somebody that Texas can really, really kind of count on to take that next step. And if he can kind of drop his strikeouts, Pierce was saying his power has really, really jumped up in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, coming off, I mean, starting as a freshman, he hit 175 as a freshman. So I mean, so you see sub 200 on the sheet, and you don't get too excited. But I mean, he played 45 games as a freshman. That's a lot of experience for 18, 19-year-old kid. And so coming into his sophomore year, having to fill the shoes of guys like Dylan Campbell, that's a big step forward. But it's he took a lot of really good steps last year, just with kind of experience. And so you're kind of getting a more experienced sophomore stepping up to the plate there, up the middle. And so I think Jalen Flores, it's a question mark, but it's more of a for sure answer than people may think.
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of a good point. Is it does kind of feel like a more sure answer.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna be honest, I can't believe we talked about Jalen Flores first. I know I'm kind of running the show, but Peyton Powell was a really
Yeah.
unexpected bat last year for Texas. Hit 339, batted in that two-hole for him, and really kind of took over the college baseball world by storm. I know in Omaha
Mhm.
last year, I was talking to Quinn Matthews, and he said that he was like the worst person to face because he said he just kept fouling everything off. And Texas gets him back for another year. I think that he's going to be kind of that veteran guy that we talk about that's going to kind of lead this team again. I think he's going to be slotted in that two hole. Jackson, what do you kind of think about Peyton Powell?
yeah, I agree. I mean, he's another big veteran presence in the infield, redshirt senior. So like, I would imagine him and Luke Storm like really command that infield as at the corners, especially. That's really strong. 16 doubles last year, 10 bombs. Again, that's another like strong bat in the infield. So
Yeah, and then Jack O'Dowd again. I think he's kind of a very consistent, almost like a throwback second baseman, like Dustin Pedroia type, where he's not going to wow you away with his power, but I think he has, kind of that slapper style. Moving into the outfield, which is I think another one of these very very big strengths of Texas. Left field, we project to be Porter Brown, the grad transfer from TCU. Hit 322 last year with 12 home runs. Jared Thomas moving over from first base into center field. I think Pierce has kind of said that he's locked down center field. Hit 321 last year. Really, really flashed some athleticism at first base. And almost felt like kind of a throwback first baseman. And then in right field, I think this is kind of the biggest question mark for Texas, but I think it's a good question mark to have as they have so many guys that I think that can step in. I project Jaden Duplantier to kind of be the first one to start. He started in left field a little bit last year, sophomore, hit 256. But again, I think the one that everybody's talking about, Will Gasparino in right field. I mean, big guy. What do you kind of expect? We'll start in right field since that's kind of the biggest question marks. Who do you think kind of separates themselves in this field?
Gasparino, 6'6", 210 freshman. I mean, he's the number one California outfielder coming out of high school. I kind of have him penciled in to maybe not start in right field at the beginning of the season, but I really think that he's going to take over that spot. And if not, I think he's going to be kind of roll into a DH spot. But Jaden Duplantier, 256 average. I think he's going to be kind of like that, that third or fourth guy. I think he'll kind of fade into that fourth guy later in the season.
Yeah, it's weird because everything that I've seen in the fall, he's just kind of not mentioned, and you almost forget that he started a ton for them at different spots. But I think he's kind of somebody that will fly under the radar. And then obviously they brought in, Max Blue, Tommy Farmer. I think these are other names to kind of watch out for. But again, we can almost talk on and on all day about Will Gasparino. Jackson, you have anything to add about him?
I mean, I was watching him today, and he took 2 swings in their fall World Series and 2 bombs. This kid is big. He's athletic. 5-tool guy. He's fast. He can do anything. 6'6", 210 again. Like, that's insane as a freshman. I would imagine he gets everyday reps, like, starting in the middle of the season, I would imagine, if he doesn't start at the beginning.
Yeah, and I think that Pierce does a tremendous job of letting these freshmen kind of get baptized into college baseball. I mean, we saw it last year with Jalen Flores, and I think that that's what we'll see here again. But I expect him to kind of take over the baseball world by storm. But I'm trying to think when the last time Texas had somebody I think with this high of expectations coming in as a freshman to start. I think that every single person in Texas is kind of circling him as somebody to watch out for. But moving on to kind of Porter Brown and Jared Thomas, I think that these are 2 veteran guys. I'm interested to see kind of how Jared Thomas's defense translates to center field. I don't think it's a question mark at all, as he was really, really athletic at first. And again, I think he kind of it gets him back into a more natural position. But I mean, he was a tremendous surprise last year as a freshman. I mean, he batted leadoff for him. It seemed like he was always on base. What do we kind of see from Jared Thomas and Porter Brown, Jackson?
I mean, Jared Thomas, the field of hit is just amazing. I think the athleticism just translates perfectly into center field. I don't think he has many issues. I would imagine he's back at that leadoff spot again because he had 321 last year. And then Porter Brown's the grad transfer. He's going to have great veteran presence in the outfield. He knows what to do in every situation pretty much. He'll be able to lead that really young outfield outside of him, like just on what to do every day.
Yeah, I mean, I think the kind of thing that really stuck out to me that I kept coming back to last year with Porter Brown was that walk-off that he had against TCU. And both teams kind of used that as a catalyst to jumpstart their season. That's kind of when Texas got rolling. And then TCU got rolling about a week later, but I felt like that was a really, really devastating loss. So Porter Brown, I think, is a very, very big piece of this Texas team. And I think that he's going to pay dividends with kind of training up these young guys too behind him. But Marshall, do you have any words on Jared Thomas and Porter Brown?
Yeah, I think Porter Brown. I think he's going to be really good for Will Gasparino. He's 323 last year, 12 home runs, and all 64 games he played and he started in. And so, I mean, if you're a freshman coming in, seeing a 5th-year guy like that, I mean, that's just a lot to learn. A really good guy to learn from. And so, I think he's going to kind of train up that crew in the outfield and kind of lead that outfield. And then Jared Thomas moving in as well. I think Porter Brown will be good for him as well. But I mean, yeah, some people say question mark with Jared Thomas moving from first to center field, but I mean, center field's his natural spot, so I don't think he's gonna miss a beat there.
Yeah, it felt very, I wouldn't say weird to watch him play first, but we've
Mhm.
kind of accustomed to first basemen being these big lumbering guys,
He's just kind of like,
and he was
skinny,
an athletic.
lanky
Like I
guy.
remember
Yeah.
against St. he bunted for a hit, and I couldn't
Yeah.
remember the
Yeah.
last time I saw a first baseman bunt for a hit. And I'm really kind of glad to see him move out to center field because I think that he is going to be more natural for there. And then
Yeah.
Pierce kind of has a lot of flexibility at first base and DH to have such a good athlete to move out to center field and really not skip a beat. Every single thing that I could find on Fall, there was no one even questioning his defensive ability. But
Yeah.
moving on to the rotation is again another kind of question mark just because Texas has so many arms that they're going to roll through. Obviously, the ace is going to be LeBaron Johnson, who's back for another year. I know that there was, honestly, I thought he was going to get drafted. I think that if you're a Texas fan, you're sad that he didn't get drafted, but you're happy that he's coming back. I project Charlie Hurley to be the Saturday guy. I know a lot of people are kind of projecting Tanner Witt, but I think he kind of translates to that Sunday guy. He came back really, really fast from injury. Um, Started in 6 games, 6 appearances. When I saw him against West Virginia, he only went 3 innings, and it looked like he was on a pitch limit. Kind of, if Pierce, I think Pierce is going to do something very, very similar again this year. So I think that he kind of goes into that Sunday role. And Charlie Hurley, I think, is another great guy that they can kind of lean on. But before we kind of jump into the question marks, let's start with the sure thing. LeBaron Johnson is going to be the Friday night guy.
Mhm.
Marshall, what stands out to you about his pitching?
I mean, redshirt junior. He's an experienced guy. I mean, first off, something to say about the starting pitching staff. If we're going with Johnson, Hurley, and Witt, they are huge. I mean, David Pierce really likes his. I mean, his big starting pitchers. I mean, dude, LeBaron Johnson's 6'4", 210. Hurley's 6'8", 225. Tanner Witt's 6'6", 230. I mean, these guys are just big old donkeys on top of the mound. And I mean, they're throwing gas. And so, I mean, LeBaron Johnson, yeah, I really thought he was going to get drafted. It's kind of like, a Christmas gift that you're getting him back if you're Texas, if you're getting him back for another year. But I mean, 2.9 ERA last year, 98 strikeouts. I really think he's going to take this season, and he's going to take control of this season and really kind of lead this pitching staff. I really think it's going to be him and Tanner Witt that lead this pitching staff.
I think the one thing that really jumped out to me about his game was the 38 walks. I know that in the
Mm,
past, I know, granted, he was coming off an injury back in
yeah.
2022, but I think he's somebody that I was always kind of worried about the walks. And another thing that I think he kind of did do was when he tended to, start missing the plate, he
Hmm.
really started to miss over the zone. I think that's why his ERA in his redshirt freshman year was as high as it was. But I think that he really kind of solved that, and especially down the stretch, he almost felt like he was more of a sure ace than Lucas Gordon, which is
Yeah.
almost crazy to say
Mhm.
because those that have been watching me for a while know that I can talk about Lucas Gordon a ton. I think he really kind of jumped out to me on the Texas side. But again, Jackson, we'll kind of move over to Tanner Witt. What do you expect from him this season?
I mean, for him, it's all about staying healthy. I have a friend who's a big Texas fan. He said one of the big keys to Texas, like they're as good as Tanner Witt is. So if he can stay healthy, that's the biggest thing for him. I don't know, has he been healthy in a full season? I can't remember.
His
Um,
freshman year.
His freshman
okay,
year, but yeah, he's coming off Tommy John, and
yeah, I
he
mean,
did kind of feel like it was rushed back a little bit, if I'm being
Yeah,
honest
yeah,
with
I
you.
very.
wouldn't be shocked if they're like extremely careful with him innings wise this year, just to like have a surefire chance that if they get to a regional or whatever, he can for sure pitch in the regional. But he just has to stay healthy, man.
Mhm.
Moving on to again the Tuesday guy, I think is a really intriguing part of Texas as well. I project Ace Whitehead to kind of be in this role, but Cody Howard is another name to watch. Andre Duplantier has pitched in that role too as well. I mean, these Tuesday guys that they have rolling out there, I think they would be weekend starters on a ton of these other teams in the SEC and Big 12. They have a ton of depth there. Marshall, we'll start with you. Who do you kind of expect to come out of these three that are kind of in the running for this Tuesday role?
Yeah, I think Ace Whitehead too. I think they're going to save Duplantier for for first guy out of the pen on Friday or Saturday. But I mean Ace Whitehead, he was really good last year. 16 appearances, 4 games started. 4 ERA. Yeah, I mean I think that he's going to kind of take over that Tuesday role and really kind of it's Tuesdays are always a question too. I mean, especially with big programs, you get these mid majors rolling in with a target on your back, and so I don't really know how he's going to do. I think they're going to they may move around a little bit, maybe throw Duplantier in there, but I think he'll kind of start out as the Tuesday guy.
Jackson, are you kind of seeing the same thing with Texas with these 3 Tuesday guys that we project?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, 4 games started to a tune of a 4.1 ERA. That's not bad at all, especially for a Tuesday guy. I mean, 24 strikeouts to 12 walks as well. You know he can control the ball. That's really good. And then Duplantier, if you have him in the bullpen, I feel like you're set. 15 saves last year, 2.4 ERA, 16 strikeouts. Like that's a good back end of the bullpen kind of guy, or even like first one out again, like Marshall said.
Yeah.
I will say to Duplantier's credit, he does seem like a very team first kind of guy. Pierce has moved
Yeah.
him around a ton. He started games early in his career. Then he was the guy who kind of ate up innings when Tanner Witt needed to go out in the third. So I think credit to him and kind of the culture that Pierce has built at Texas, that he's not really somebody that's discouraged and he's kind of, willing to accept different roles. But moving on kind of to that bullpen, obviously I think it's all going to start with David Shaw. He's going to be the lockdown closer. 26 appearances last year, 3.09 ERA, 30 strikeouts to only 14 walks. I think he's a guy that Texas is going to really, really lean on, as David Pierce loves to kind of bring in this ninth inning slam the door kind of guy. And I think David Shaw is probably the best one that Pierce has had in the 20s. So given the last 3 or 4 years, I think this is the best closer that Texas has had.
Yeah, I agree. And is he a sophomore or junior this year?
He is a junior, so this is his
He's a
draft
junior.
eligible season.
Yeah, he draft eligible. A lot to prove this season. I mean, big kid, out of Houston, 6'7", 200. I mean, yeah, I think he's going to be a lockdown closer for sure, for sure.
Jackson, what do you kind of see from David Shaw?
I mean, yeah, I agree. Lockdown closer potential for sure. He was extremely good last year. And like Marshall said earlier, Texas loves their big pitchers, dude. Another big, massive guy on the mound. I don't even know. That's insane.
I mean, those opposing hitters. I mean, I feel bad for him. I'm glad I wasn't good enough to play Division I baseball, man, because that would be terrifying.
A great segue into another guy that we expect to kind of be a setup man and maybe sometimes pitch in the closing role. Heston Tolley was really kind of the go-to guy for David Pierce. I know he had the injury there at the end, but
Mhm.
he was truly lights out. 19 appearances, a 1.90 ERA with 20 strikeouts. David Pierce gets him back. And then Luke Harrison, he missed all of 2023 due to an injury, but led the team in appearances. I think he's somebody that these are two guys that Texas kind of has the luxury again that the 7th, 8th, and 9th, I think you better get to these Texas pitchers early because if
Mhm.
Tolley, Harrison, and Shaw come in, I think it's really going to cause nightmares for the staffs on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. What did Tully injure last year?
I think it was his shoulder, but don't
It
quote
was
me
his
on that.
shoulder.
It wasn't arm. It
Okay.
was related to his arm.
Mhm. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how he responds because he was lights out last year. I mean, those numbers speak for themselves. But yeah,
Jackson, what are
Yeah, I
you kind of
agree.
seeing from these two guys in the back end of the bullpen?
I mean, Heston Tolley has the potential to be elite. I mean, 1.9 ERA in 19 appearances. That's disgusting. And then again, another massive kid, 6'6", 230. That's a big boy out there. Holy.
yeah.
Yeah, if we're gonna grade the Longhorns right now, Marshall, what kind of grade are you giving Texas? Let's start with the hitting, pitching, and then moving on to kind of an overall grade. Where do you kind of grade this Texas team?
So I'll start with the pitching. I'm really excited about this pitching staff. I mean, I love big pitchers, big bodies that just throw heat. And so I start. It's kind of bold, but I start them off with an A, man. I'm really excited about this pitching staff. See what they can do. Hitting wise, that's a little bit more of a question mark for me, because you do have a lot of new guys in the behind the plate at shortstop, right field. A lot of new guys stepping up. Um, I give them a I give them a B. I want to say C plus, but it is Texas, and I trust David Pierce. I'm going to go with a B, and I think they'll raise it to an A by the end of the season. And then defensively, I'll go with a B again. Starting off just because they have a lot of new faces.
Yeah, I was going to go B minus from a hitting standpoint. The guys that they return, I think, are tremendous. But
Mhm.
again, there are a lot of question marks behind the plate. Are these freshmen going to come in and take huge roles? I think that's the thing that really kind of worries me about this. But from a pitching staff, I think that this is an A in
Yeah.
every sense of the word in college baseball. There's a ton of guys with college experience that are coming in, and I think it's going to be a fight in the bullpen to try and get innings because they just have so many talented arms. And you only need 27 outs. I think that Pierce has the luxury to kind of do that. Jackson, what would you kind of grade this Texas team?
Pitching staff, I think it's an A if they stay healthy. The key to them is to stay healthy. I mean, the 7, 8, and 9, the bullpen's like one of the best in college baseball. The starting rotation is one of the best in college baseball if they're healthy as well. Offense, I'm gonna say probably a B, but they can raise it to an A. Like you said, there's just a bunch of new faces, but the potential is definitely there. And then defensively, I'll give B plus because the outfield defense, I like the outfield defense a lot. The infield defense can up the middle, they
Moving
look
on
great.
kind of to
So
their schedule now. They open up with San Diego, which obviously was a team that didn't make the tournament in 2023, but in 2022 they did. Cal Poly, then they go to the College Classic where they're going to play LSU and Vandy. And then they start SEC play Jackson with your Texas Tech Red Raiders. I really like what David Pierce kind of did with this schedule and their Big 12 quote unquote bye. They went out and scheduled Washington. They scheduled a ton of talented mid majors. Again, Air Force is almost kind of turned it into a yearly thing. They play Texas A&M in a midweek. There's a lot to like about what Pierce has done, and I think that this is a schedule that bodes well for them to get an RPI that where they want to be hosting.
yeah, I agree.
Marshall, what's kind of the game that jumps out to you? What's kind of the series you're circling with Texas?
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves that Air Force series. Sorry, Jake, you broke up there for a second on my end, but that Air Force series is always a lot of fun, dude. I mean, just going back to 3 years ago, whenever Skeens was there, kind of that's when kind of not necessarily rivalry, but just a fun series that they have, man. But then also, I'm really looking forward to the Texas Tech series. I kind of have circled at the beginning of the season. That's always a really fun one, and then I'm also excited about that Washington series too. That Washington series game. I don't know why. I'm just intrigued by that. So
Let's
the
hope
off week Big
Texas
12.
doesn't start out 0-3.
Yeah.
I know that I think they've done that in 2 of the last 3 seasons, and then the one year they didn't.
Mhm.
I'm not even going to try and ballpark what it was. I know that every time they go to Arlington, it seems like they go 0-3, and Pierce kind of uses it as a learning experience. So I
Yeah.
don't anticipate that with San Diego.
San
But
Diego.
again, I think that we're really not going to know what this team is until March 1st when they go play LSU on Friday night.
Mhm.
LSU, I think that one's going to be a battle. And we saw it last week in a Tuesday game. I mean, that game was pretty
Yeah.
intense. So I can't imagine what this is going to be on a Friday night in Houston.
Yeah.
It's exciting to kind of see that, these schools are kind of back in Texas. It's really kind of cool to see that they schedule so many times. Because again, LSU and Texas are both 2 teams that probably one of those 2 will be in Omaha statistically.
Yeah.
Jackson,
Absolutely.
I know that obviously, they play your Red Raiders and Marshall kind of
yeah.
stole your thunder there. What's another series that really jumps out to you about this Texas team?
When they play A&M, I think that'll be a good series as well. 2 top Texas teams. I think that'll be really great. And then TCU as well. TCU is going to be a good Big 12 battle. 2 teams projected in the top 2 or 3 of Big 12 play. I would imagine in the preseason rankings. So that'll be really competitive as well.
One thing to kind of note, I think, for the other Big 12 teams as we kind of project Texas, they closed with UCF and Kansas. I think that bodes well for them to kind of pick up games down the stretch as they face those 2 teams, which honestly Texas should just outclass both of them. I know it's really hard to sweep, especially in the Big 12, but I could see Texas going 6-0 down the stretch if they can get through that Oklahoma State series, which again, it always seems like we're talking about Texas hosting and being in the Big 12 mix. And I think that this is a team that we're definitely going to have to consider around that mid-May mark.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, though, because Kansas kind of ran Texas for their money, man, last year. They beat them in the Big 12 tournament last year, and then I don't know what they did during the regular season, but I'm
I
really
know
looking forward
last
to
time they came to Austin, I know Texas swept, but
They
they
swept.
kind of
Okay.
sleepwalked through it
Mhm.
or sleptwalked
Yeah.
through it. They really didn't play very good. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I wouldn't say Kansas has Texas's number by any stretch of the imagination, but it
No,
always
no,
kind
no,
of
no,
does
no.
seem like they sleepwalk through that matchup,
Yeah,
which,
yeah.
I mean, maybe Pierce will kind of get them ready. It's kind
Mhm.
of weird that Pierce has been to Omaha as much as he has, and he almost kind of feels like he's on the hot seat from some Texas fans, which I think is completely unwarranted.
Yeah,
I think
no
he's
way.
Oh,
truly one of the
absolutely.
best coaches. I think he's one of the best coaches in the country. The amount of
Yeah.
just I know he doesn't recruit at some of the levels of some of the other coaches, but I think what he gets out of his guys and just the way he gets guys to buy into the program, I really, really like what David Pierce does in Austin. It kind of, as Marshall and I can kind of say, kind of sucks that he's in Austin because we both deep down kind of have despised Texas. But I truly love David Pierce led teams. They have a grit to them.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where this Texas team kind of goes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, if they can get through that Oklahoma State series, and if they get hot at the right time, I mean, look out because they're looking for revenge from last year.
All right, before we go, ceilings and floors. Marshall, what's your ceiling for Texas and what's your floor for Texas?
So ceiling, I really think that that pitching staff is going to be solid. Like I said earlier, if the guys stay healthy on the mound, and then those new guys stepping up in the field and in the at the plate, if they can kind of get it together, I really think they can go to Omaha this year and make a really good run. So that's my ceiling. My floor is honestly a super regional. I think they're going to be really solid this year.
Jackson, your thoughts? What's your ceiling and floor for Texas?
My ceiling, I think the ceiling is obviously a national championship run. I think it's Omaha or bust this year for Texas. I'm gonna be honest. And then their floor, I could definitely see them hosting Super Regional, assuming everything goes right. So
Yeah, I was going to say I think that's the ceiling that I have for Texas too. I think is national champion. I know that that's almost crazy to say with how good Wake is, but I think that this team, if everything kind of clicks right, they have the staff to go very, very deep in Omaha and go to toe with somebody like Wake. And then their floor, I would say in a nightmare scenario for Texas, I think they're still a French host, if not a host stub. And then they come out of whatever regional they go to as a 2 seed and make it to a super regional. I think that, obviously there's going to be ups and downs to a season, but they just have so many guys that they can run out there that if somebody does kind of struggle, I think Texas has just the depth to kind of plug and play guys in that I don't think they've had in years past.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Marshall, final thoughts. Who breaks out for Texas?
Final thoughts breaks out. If Tanner Witt can stay healthy, I really think he's going to have a season similar to his freshman year. I think he's coming off of Tommy John, man. I think he's finally healthy. So Tanner Witt, and then also Peyton Powell for sure.
Peyton Powell. All right, I'll go Jalen Flores. I did a big expose on him today on Twitter. I think he's kind of my breakout candidate for Texas. Jackson, take us on home. Who's your breakout candidate?
Will Gasparino, preseason Big 12 freshman of the year. He's gonna be nasty this year. I promise you, he's gonna be nasty.
Well, there you have it. This has been the deep dive into the Texas Longhorns. Marshall, Jackson, it's always a pleasure. We'll see you next week for the Texas A&M Aggies.
Yep. Later, guys.
See you.